Hello and welcome to Elite Rounders Poker Channel. Today we are reviewing second hand from Juho. Actually, this is the number 2 hand, student hand, and today we are looking at like playing pocket threes here. And I think Juho makes pretty standard open. The stack size are not perfect. Like there's a couple of shorties, but I think it's still fine open, pretty profitable. So the flop is awesome. You decides to bet a little bit bigger on this flop. It's kind of like interesting. In a sense, I do understand, especially on a3 deuce, to bet like bigger, because like if he has 8, there's very high chance that there's like overcard or something which will come and kind of kill your equity in a, or potentially they will just fold to big turn bet. So, but I think it's more like when we are 100 big blinds deep, like in this case almost 100 big blinds deep, it's not like we are even super happy to stack off on board a3 deuce, because like villain still has a lot of flushes. So this is potentially a great hand if it improves to a full house. But if it doesn't do that, versus like most of the regulars, I don't even know if he should, like, definitely versus regulars, I don't even know if this would be like profitable to barrel big size 3 streets, because they are just going to end up calling you with maybe flush, right? So you have to always keep in mind that if you bet like huge size, you do make the villain's range tighter, in a sense that they don't need to defend that much and they can kind of like fold out a lot of things. So for example here, he probably doesn't need to continue with anything like 3x without heart, or something like deuce without heart. So he's just continuing with like 3 with a heart, deuce with a heart. So he can fold out a lot of hands, even calling like if he has pocket 7s, he'll probably fold out here versus this bet if he has pocket 7s, right? So at least I think that's totally reasonable. So the turn we use big size. So it is in a sense like interesting. Like we go like 125%, which I guess like technically we could, but like I think few things here. In terms of his range, like when he's calling the flop, sure, you want to protect yourself versus like any heart, but we don't need to bet this big to protect ourselves versus heart. So you just don't want to give him like super good odds to call versus, right? Like if he has like heart, but again, he's only chasing the heart, which you might lose against. So it's not that bad. But like in a sense, like what are you trying to get value from here? Like if he has somehow some queen, I guess he might call, but now I'm feeling like if you bet this size, he might even drop the 8x in his range. So it's more like we are targeting here like 8x and the flush draws what he's calling. So I think like it's a bit too big bet size even with this hand. Like maybe if you have like ace high flush draw, maybe you could play like this. You could definitely at least stack him every time he has like lower flush or something. But that probably happens kind of naturally anyway. So I don't really see like huge point betting here like massive size, especially with this hand. Although of course like we see, we don't really block anything. Like he could have all those like hard flush draws and everything, but in the end we don't need to use this big bet size to just deny his equity or something. So in a sense, like, and when this happens, like you bet 125% and the villain shoves, now we are in just ugly spot. I think in this case we need like 38%. I gave villain this sort of range. Okay, so this is all the flushes, top 2 pair sets which he might jam. But again, like I think people might not even shove these, sets always. And in this case, I also gave him few bluffs, like ace of hearts, ace 5. So something like ace of hearts and something as a bluff. So in this case we should technically call, because like we only need 38 something percent. But the problem is also then risk premium, and like you were saying, this massive tournament, there was like 8,000 players left or whatever, and I think there's a lot of value for you to be in this game. You're still left with 22,000 chips if you don't call here. So I think that's like that gives us like so much playability still. I mean, that's 64 big blinds if we fold this, which I think, like, if you think it's like this is close, then you think about like the risk premium. You have great stack. You can do whatever with 64 big blinds. You can probably 5-bet bluff, right? So you can do a lot of things with 64 big blinds. So I think it's like at this point you're probably in a soft tournament, a very soft tournament with a lot of players. So I think you just want to probably snap fold here in a sense, like it's not worth the risk. Again, you probably call here if you know the guy is just mental, like, but again, without any reads, I think it's a snap fold, especially when you use this big bet size. It really becomes like the hand Phil Hellmuth against Dope Bulk, like 200 big blinds deep. Like when people jam here, there's just no bluffs, and only bluffs you could think is like ace of heart and 4 something. Like that's pretty much the only bluffs. Otherwise it's just going to be always like flush or set of deuces, which would be the best case scenario. And even queen 8, I'm not even sure if they're shoving queen 8. So if they're not doing that, like if they don't shove queen 8, this becomes like a miserable situation. So now you're like making terrible call. So now we are barely 32% here. I mean barely, we are not 32%. So if they don't even jam the top 2, it's a miserable situation. And when the range really lacks the bluffs in this situation, like I believe in this situation without any reads, they will. So I think you can make a fairly easy laydown here. It sucks a lot, but like Dope Bulk laid down second nuts versus Phil Hellmuth. It can be done in a situation where there's just like no bluffs, right? Like you just start to think about like, what is he bluffing here? It's like, no, this doesn't look like to anybody a good spot to bluff. You can have any flush, you can have any set. Like it doesn't look like a spot where people would just, hey, I'm gonna rip in like rest of the 100 big blinds like here just as a bluff. Okay, GG if he did, and if that's something he's exploiting you, then good for him. But I think we want to fold this small, barely break-even call. Definitely kind of snap folding, actually. But yeah, and I think it's totally fine as well, especially with the risk premium and everything. So I don't think it's even that close with these deep stacks and everything. So it looks like a pretty easy fold in that sense. But again, in the game, definitely not fun to make this fold. But I'm sure you're feeling in this hand, like when you bet this 125%, and you get shoved on, you're probably vomiting and thinking life sucks and yada yada yada, which is very common. But sometimes when you get that feeling, it's probably the best to click the fold button, because usually when I end up calling these, I'm not making money. It's more like the disgusting call. It's like, oh no, call, you know, like. So I think it is something you hate to do. But yeah, I think it's a good lesson though. These are definitely not easy folds to make. So it's something that takes time to learn. But yeah, definitely I think the turn sizing could be smaller. To target more like his 8x, which he would continue to turn, and his flush draws, and what else he could have, like 9s, 10s. He could still have pre-flop, right? And he will have some queen x he calls, and then he could also get called from these hands like on river. If you bet this big size, I think they will fold on river a lot of those one pair hands actually. So we are not getting like 3 streets of value from these hands most likely anyway. I mean, it's very likable, unless again you have some reads that this guy never drops top pair if you battle 3 streets. But again, it will be very read dependable in that sense. If you think the guy is just gonna call 8x here no matter what, of course use 125%. But I think otherwise you might want to size down a little bit and aim like a little bit small size. You don't need to bet this huge, especially with this hand, because like it's not exactly not hand on this board. if this was a rainbow board, turn would probably make sense to like bet like kind of like this polarized size like you're using. But yeah, I think it's fine. But yeah, sometimes when you bet those big bets and you get check raise, check min raise, like it's just one of those spots where you just have to make big folds. I sadly think so. But yeah, nice hand, interesting one, and keep them coming.